Not that long ago, if you think about it, not that long ago, you were stuck at a job you absolutely hated. And now you're not. But we forget about that, right? Because, well, a deal fell through and now you're questioning the fact that, do you even belong in this industry? Well, what's the alternative? Going back to the place where you hated it? It's just a situation. What can you do to better your situation? All right. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mindset Master. I'm your host, AZ Araujo, and I gotta say, I am happy to be here. And I've been thinking about this whole word, right? Happy, and what's involved with being happy. And I gotta tell you, it's a lot of hard work being happy. And I think we've all experienced in one arena or another where everything's going well, and all of a sudden, it seems like the emotion of happy just dissipates, and you're the complete opposite. Happy turns into sad. Happiness turns into rage. Happiness turns into just, being disgruntled and unhappy. And for me, I think I'm starting to figure myself out. It's taken me 43 years, but I think I'm finally starting to figure out my flaws, right? And let me explain here. I think we all understand what an upper limit is. If you haven't, I'm going to recommend a great book that I read back in 2014 called The Upper Limit. The Big Leap. The Big Leap, and it talks about the upper limit by Gay Hendricks. And it was just one of these things where I became aware of my dysfunctional patterns, right? Where I could only tolerate a certain amount of happiness before I would sabotage, before I would start feeling uneasy, before I would get in my own way and, bring those levels of happiness down. Like I couldn't handle it for long periods of time. And I think I'm different in that retrospect, right? When I compare myself now, back to 2014, in 2014, I was constantly caught up in this mindset. Like if I feel too good for too long, something bad's going to happen. And I can go ahead and track it all the way back to when I was a kid, right? I remember my parents just talking about hey, things are going too good. Just be prepared. Be prepared that something may not go so well, right? For every good thing, a bad thing may occur. So I was always in this mindset that, I can only tolerate so much before something bad happened. And I didn't realize for a long time that I'm the one who caused the bad things to happen, because I either stopped the progression, I either stopped my focus, right? And was now in a defensive position. I was like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to go on here? Or I would just unknowingly, cause issues. Like in my marriage, I would spark up a disagreement of some sort, and I would bring myself down. But I think I'm becoming more in tune where I'm at, and I go back to this whole thing of being flawed in the fact that, I think my happiness is not necessarily that I'm not happy. I think it's more of I'm caught up too much in situational happiness. And let me explain here. I think my life has improved in incredible ways. My marriage has improved in unbelievable ways. Having this relationship that I have with my daughters is just something I could never imagine, right? And my businesses are flourishing. So overall, I would say this should create a happy life. But I get myself caught up in these situational situations, right? Situational feelings. Where everything's based on what is happening in that situation alone. And I really start to question if I made the right decision. I really lose focus of the bigger picture. And I just start focusing on that situation alone, right? And I think that's really destroyed momentum on where I could have been. Even though I've progressed nicely, I always think about if I were just to be able to dominate this or master these feelings where I get triggered, right? Because I would say one of the things is I'm impatient. And I although I'm aware of it, it still happens. It's already a natural strand in my DNA. I see myself, you know, going down this path I don't want to go down, but I can't seem to just help myself. I just make things worse, or I don't help the situation, even though my mind's screaming at me like, dude, like pivot right now. It's not a big deal. Stop it. Stop it. You're going the wrong way, bro. Chill out. I can't seem to just help myself. And, one of the situations like this past, even last night, we're hanging out in the living room of my new house, and it's perfect. My daughters are doing homework right there on this table. Carla's doing some work. We're watching a movie. I'm in my own element doing the same thing, right? So we're there as a family. I mean, how beautiful is that? My 17-year-old daughter, going to be 18 here pretty soon, still wants to hang out with mom and dad. My 13-year-old still thinks we're the greatest, individuals on earth, and we're there hanging out. And it's like, why couldn't I just stay there? But something happened that I got into this place where now it became a situational happiness, as opposed to just stepping back and saying, this is what I've always yearned for. This is what I always desired. This is what I pictured for many years. But instead, I get caught up in the situational happiness where my daughter happens to drop Carla's coffee, and it's on our brand new rug. Right now, I didn't explode like I typically do, but just because I don't explode doesn't mean I didn't make things better. Like I didn't really help the situation, because I was like, I knew that was going to happen. And then my daughter's like, oh, I'm sorry. And Carla's jumping up. She's trying to wipe it down. But I'm the one who drained the entire situation. Like, why couldn't I have just stayed there? Why couldn't I have just hung back and say, I'm here with my family. They're safe. I provided an environment where they can thrive exponentially. They're not full of anxiety. They're not riddled with anxiety. They're not wondering where their next, meal's coming from. All the things that they need are taken care of. It's not just the wants. I'm giving them things that they wants and needs. And here I am, like focused all my energy on this one situational accident. So I'm like looking at it. Now I can't even focus. I disregard the fact that we're all there together. And that just triggers other things that I did. I was like, I just got up, didn't say much. I didn't yell, which is a good thing, right? In my mind, I'm like, all right, just don't get upset. But I didn't help the situation. And these are the things that really hold us back from creating something bigger for ourselves. It really does, if you really think about it, right? Just because I didn't explode or get upset or yell or anything doesn't mean I made the situation any better. I mean, I still have this energy that I just drained from the situation. So I just get up and I put my stuff in the kitchen, my cup, and I go to the room. I'm going to get ready for bed. But that wasn't even my intention 5 minutes prior to that. I still planned to finish whatever I was watching, hanging out with my daughters. And I just drained that situation. And I'm like, man, why I always get caught up on this situational happiness? Why couldn't I just take a step back and understand that I appreciate the work that I've done? And many of us are walking around with this chip on our shoulder. Many of us are unhappy or are so focused on how things didn't go well in this situation that we're ruining everything else that we created. You're not. But we forget about that, right? Because, well, a deal fell through and now you're questioning the fact that, do you even belong in this industry? Well, what's the alternative? Going back to the place where you hated it? It's just a situation. What can you do to better your situation? And these are the things that I think, at least in my case, I forget. Being so caught up on the situation as opposed to taking a step back. And this is just one of many things that went down this week. As many of you know, like I bought a house last year, and we've taken about a year to remodel this thing. 1 year. And there was a time where, I just wanted to get into the home. There was this anticipation of one day it's going to happen, right? Because it was they had to remodel the whole thing. So it took a long time. 3 months to planning, 8 months of construction. There were some delays, and there's still some issues now. As a matter of fact, when we moved in, everything wasn't perfect the way I pictured it, right? Because I think I painted the picture too bright in the fact that I thought it was supposed to be free of problems. So when problems actually occurred, I was like triggered. Like nothing should ever be that way. We should never picture it without the problem. See, we always see the upside to getting what we want, to our goals, to the vision, right? But we never really see the hard work that goes behind it. We never see the problems that will inevitably come up. We just see this perfect picture of what it's going to be when you start making, 6 figures in this industry or 7 figures, right? We always picture about what it is to go into the line of entrepreneurship. Like it looks so good. It's going to be so awesome. But at the moment we face decisions, it's like because we never really focused on the downside of it, on the downside of the decisions we make. In every situation, there's an upside and there's a downside. I mean, think about it. When you got into this industry, you painted this beautiful picture. And then you got demotivated and you started questioning yourself when everything didn't line up to that picture. And this is where we have to kind of like check ourselves and understand that nothing great is ever easy. And it's never that perfect. Like when has everything turned out perfectly? Nothing you decide that's currently out of your comfort zone, turns out perfectly. There's always situations we have to overcome. There's always obstacles we have to overcome. So here I am, and it's my fault. It's my fault, right? This whole time I'm anticipating, I'm waiting patiently. It's going to be a year, but when I move in, it's going to be perfect. All I have to do is move in with my toothbrush and my clothes, and everything's going to be taken care of. And I was caught up with that story. So when the disappointment actually happened, it triggered the hell out of me. It brought emotions in me that frustrated the heck out of me. Right? When you get your first listing, you're like so happy. I got my first listing and everything didn't turn out the way it is, where you put it under contract and then it falls out, and then only to put it into contract again and for some reason it falls out again. Like we wanted this listing. We were anticipating this huge thing, but we forgot to look at the fact that, there's going to be problems attached to that. There always is. But we conveniently forget. So this anticipation of trying to move into this house for the last year, and I'm like, okay, everything's perfect. Everything's going to be perfect. So we move in. Everything seems like it worked out exactly how I envisioned it. Until I look down and there's a cricket. I'm like, all right, no big deal. Go ahead and smash it. Then I hear my daughters yelling, oh my God, there's crickets. Not in that voice, but you know what I'm talking about. They start yelling, there's crickets. And I'm running across the house and I'm killing those crickets. And then I hear Carla on the other side of the house, there's crickets. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Well, it turns out that, when you're remodeling a house for a year, contractors are going to leave the doors open. They don't care. They need to make it easy for ingress and egress, right? So they left the doors open. And many times now that I think about it, I had to check on my cameras and tell the contractor, hey, you left the back door open, wide open, and it's got like a 20-foot opening in the back. Of course, there was going to be some issues, but I didn't anticipate those things. I didn't anticipate any problems. Again, I was only focused on, the positive things. About just all the great things that I was going to do as soon as I move in. That I even foresaw, like it's common sense. Like if the doors are open, there's going to be critters that get in. And I didn't see this. And then it didn't just stop with crickets. Next thing you know, we start seeing like spiders. And my daughter, she's got a brand new bed, brand new comforter, sheets, the whole 9 yards. And she rolls it back and there's little spiders everywhere. We're like, damn. There goes my big vision. No longer am I looking at what I just created. The fact that we're even there. The fact that I was able to purchase something and remodel it of things that were just a dream a few years ago. And now I'm just caught up on the fact that there's crickets and spiders. And then we discovered that there's a bunch of like roaches on the outside. And then attached to that, there's scorpions. So the whole week I'm like frustrated because the pest control company couldn't be there until Friday. So here we are discovering these things Sunday night, and we have to live with it, right? And during the whole week, I'm just frustrated with the fact that, hey, I've paid all this money. Somebody should have told me. I start blaming the contractor. And I'm like, why didn't she tell me? And I'm looking at my daughters, and they're afraid. They're like so scared of bugs. It could be a housefly. I mean, they're terrified. So I'm just hearing all these complaints, and it's crazy what happens with your mind. At the end of the day, I'm like, did I even make the right decision moving out here? Like it got from a point where there's crickets to the point where I'm like questioning my decisions. And I'm questioning, did I hire the right contractor? When I know I did, they delivered. And we get caught up on the situational problem as opposed to the whole. So we're dealing with these crickets and spiders and roaches and, scorpions. And finally, we're frustrated to a point where I'm short with Carla. She's short with me. She's frustrated. The kids can feel our tension. We're yelling at them for not cleaning up their room. And we're just short, impatient. Here we are moving into what was a dream just a few years ago, and we can't get past a cricket. I mean, that's dysfunctional, right? And for me, I got to understand that, even though it's something that's been ingrained in me through and through, just the way I was brought up, I got to be more aware of this, because I will ruin my progression and I will ruin my long-term happiness if I just don't take a moment to realize it's just crickets. It's just crickets. There's a solution to this. And just because the solution is not right now, there is a solution to this. But I'm caught up. Now my entire, my upper limit, right? I'm into this new home that took so long to get into, as opposed to being there. It lasted about 1 hour, because that's when we discovered our first cricket. And then it was stayed with me for the entire week. And these are the things that we have to think about. You may be in a place right now where things are not working out as the market turns. You may be questioning yourself. You may be frustrated with where your business is going. You're not really paying attention, right, to what you've actually created. It wasn't that long ago that you wish you had these problems. And now that you're happy, now that you have them, you're questioning them. We have to take a step back and realize that this is not about situational happy. This is about long term. Look at the steps that you did. Look at the courage you had. Not too long ago, you didn't have the courage to pull the trigger to tell your boss, I'm leaving. And we're caught up on the situational happy. And, even though I'm aware of it, I'm like, why do I always keep coming back to this? I have to do something about it. And I'm not saying that I resolve that aspect of me. I'm still a very impatient person. I get caught up in my own feelings and my own thoughts. I'm a flawed individual. I ruined the moment we had because of coffee. I ruined feeling happy and accomplished and driven because of crickets. It's ridiculous sometimes. And we have to determine, we have to see our own patterns. And we got to match it and understand that, with any good move, any great move, there's going to be its fair share of problems. You have to just figure it out. Like, don't ruin your happiness because of that. Don't start an argument at home because of that. Don't question yourself just because things didn't turn out exactly right. The vision was still there. I could have looked back and said, man, this is exactly what I wanted, hanging out with my family. But I focused on coffee. This is the home I've always dreamed of, but then I focused on crickets. It's insane. But it's always the culmination, right? When we allow our thoughts to kind of go in a negative pattern, it just keeps going. And I believe we rectified the issue. We had the pest control company come out finally. And, we knocked out a few birds with one stone. Like, he came by and I found a wasp nest And that was a funny situation now that I think about it. It was a side conversation with my pool guy where a wasp comes and he is drinking water. I'm like, man, I pulled down and I started explaining to him how I took down all the shrubs so that the wasp would disappear, but they're still around. And he happens to mention to me, well, in this pool, in the gearbox for the pool, I think there's a wasp nest there. So it was great timing. Like I didn't get to see that at the time. I was just focused on the fact that there was wasps and crickets now, right? So when the pest control company comes in, I tell them about that. So we open up the gearbox or whatever, the control box for the pool. And sure enough, about 20 wasps come out. I wish I could have recorded this, but it was a funny sight. We both run in different directions. We're running for our lives, but we discovered a wasp nest. So he's spraying the house and he takes down the wasp nest. And then we find the source of the issues where all the crickets, all the spiders, all the scorpions, everything you could think of, right? It was just, my house was infested. It really was. So he discovered as he's spraying out, there's a tree trunk it was a palm tree that was chopped down many years ago. And there's a hole in the stump. It's about a foot down, right? Well, at the moment he sprayed it, it was like a scene from the original Mummy movie. Do you remember that? Where all these like roaches and all these insects start coming out, hundreds of them. I even got it recorded, like hundreds of these things start coming out of this tree trunk. And they're just, going into the yard, going up the walls, trying to avoid the poison. So I go to the front door and I try to look at my front door and I see all these insects dying. And they're falling off the ceiling because they were trying to escape and they're falling off the ceiling. It was a nasty sight. But there's a solution. We found the source of the problem. And then so that was beautiful. We found the source of the problem, and then I started again realizing that it was just neglect. I mean, we haven't been there for a year. It was a vacant house. Nobody's fault. It's a great lesson for me because I've been able to share that with a couple of people already that are in the process of remodeling their homes. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even think about it. I think most of us don't think about it. But now, anytime moving forward, I want to make sure it's sprayed before any furniture is put in there. I want to make sure it's sprayed so that my family doesn't have to focus on crickets and we could focus on what we created. And it now that I look about it, it's a hilarious sight. I mean, it was kind of out of a horror movie is how the pest control company guy mentioned it or described it. When he sprayed that, there was all sorts of bugs coming out. But now we feel better. Like our house has been secured. Carla and I spent the day kind of sweeping up these scorpions, these roaches, these crickets, like the whole weekend. I mean, the poison's working. We don't see as many inside the house anymore. Carla and I got up early and we started putting even more boric acid around the windows. We discovered that there were some areas where the window didn't close fully and there was a gap. So we found that where the issues were and how insects got into our house. We ordered new beds for our daughters, right? So we came up with these situations, but I could have gone this route way before it became a problem, way before I created a problem within my household. We got to understand this is long-term happiness, not situational happiness. So start looking where you're at today. Are you emotionally involved with a decision or with something that's not happening just the way you wanted it right now, that is destroying any form of happiness within your household, is causing issues with your family and your marriage? It's making you question yourself. Like, we got to take a step back. It wasn't that long ago where you desired these problems. So we got to appreciate it from that standpoint, not be so involved in the situational emotion. So approach the day that way. At the moment you want to get triggered, just think back a few years ago. You've always desired this. We just got to find a solution. And at the end of the day, it's just a damn cricket. So guys, I think we all know what to do. And it starts with making sure that we're aware of the problem. Notice our own flaws. And understand it's a bigger picture, not just the picture before us. So I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery. But I want to go ahead and read a few of these comments. And if you have anything to say, anything you want to share, please do so. I'd like to get your feedback. I stand with your daughters. Yes. I don't ask for less problems. I ask for a new mindset to overcome the new obstacles that will come with new opportunities. That's exactly right, Ruby. And I think we get caught up so much on the problem that we forget why we got there to begin with. You know, I can't just always have the mindset that just a vision and a goal is free of problems. No, it's like the old saying, right? A new level, a new devil. There's going to be things we don't anticipate. And that's why I think many business owners quit, because they envisioned all the positive side of owning a business. They envisioned it all, but they fail to look at that there's always a flip side to that. There's always the problems you need to overcome to have that outcome. It's not just all one-sided. How beautiful would that be if everything was just positive, right? But that would create boredom. And that's another conversation for another day. But just because things don't work out the way you imagined, it doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. There's problems you must overcome to be there. A new level, a new devil. I love the message. Don't let the small things that bug you stop your mindset. Yeah, like how many times do we get triggered by that, right? Where, man, everything's going good and all of a sudden something so situational, so small, it just completely rocks our world. It just shows that we are human. We always question our decision first out of emotion. That's exactly it. And I think I need to have more emotional control. And I'm becoming aware of it, right? But I'm still flawed in that aspect. Like, why do I ruin the things as they're going so well based on little, meaningless, situational items? Sometimes we make decisions while going through emotions, and that can create issues. We just have to step back and take the hard look at the situation. And that's a great way to look at it. And again, sometimes I get caught up so much, and maybe that's something that you may experience. You know you're getting caught up in this emotion, and you just can't seem to stop yourself. And I need to do a better job of that, because I think I ruin a lot of good moments. Even though I have a lot of wins on that, I know I can get better. And this is where I'm trying to improve. This is where I'm really trying to improve. Like, we've all created big things that were outside of our reach not too long ago. Like, why are we getting caught up on the situational problems? I can literally picture the wasps. We are running for our lives. We both took off in different directions, and it was the pest control company was Green Mango, good guys, and we both just went in opposite directions. We ran like it was hilarious. And the same thing happened when all these bugs just came out of the tree trunk. It was an amazing sight. It was a nasty sight. Please share the recording. I'll share it. In life, it's not happens, it's how we react. Yeah. Absolutely, I go through it. So guys, I want to thank you, and hopefully you got something insightful today that will just make you take a step back. We're more powerful than the situation at hand. And it's our job and our duty to create that happiness, to create that stability and safety for our household, and also for our mind. We know what we want. So just because you're running into problems doesn't mean you're on the wrong track, on the wrong path, or that you made the wrong decision. Let's just lean into it. Overcome that problem, overcome that obstacle, and realize you're much further than you've ever been. And that right there is a win. Thank you again for joining me for this episode of Mindset Mastery. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye now. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Badass Agents Podcast, brought to you by AZ & Associates and Do the Work Coaching and Consulting. You can watch this and other episodes by subscribing to our channel on YouTube or by visiting us directly at badassagents.com. And of course, you can listen to this episode and many others on your preferred podcast provider.